Shalom, friends. Peace unto you. I'm grateful for this opportunity again to stand in the pulpit of this wonderful church, as I've been privileged to do since 2015. I'm deeply touched to be considered your rabbi in residence. I chuckle too. Few rabbis can point to such a mutually satisfactory relationship with the Christian congregation, let alone one as distinguished as this one. Along with the teaching role I have enjoyed in your adult forum and in your pub theology programs, that's an interesting one. The opportunity to stand in for so fine a homilist as Father Wynne Lewis is indeed a signal honor. I am sure that Father Wynne is enjoying his well-deserved sabbatical and will return re-energized and ready to serve this congregation. Meanwhile, you are in very good hands in the pastoral care of Fathers Nigel and Jess and the other members of the clergy associated with Christ and St. Luke's. I also join you in heartfelt prayer for the speedy recovery of our cherished Mother Sue Crommelin. This morning, my biblical message is related to the reading from the Book of Kings that is still echoing in our ears. To prepare the heart still further to receive its message, I have invited our talented and creative musical director, Kevin, to play a particular song popular in the 1970s. I will not identify it just now, but we will arrive at the title as soon as we have heard it. Please give your attention to the music. Who thinks they know the song? All right. Well, we are a slightly younger congregation than the 8 o'clock congregation. They all knew it, which of course, dates that congregation a bit, because this was one of the most popular songs of 1973. Yesterday, when I was preaching in my home congregation, Temple Israel, up at Ward's Corner, I joked with the congregants that I might catch, I know this is awful, I'm sorry, I might catch some flack for this unorthodox introduction to a sermon. Specifically, I might catch some Roberta flack. Perhaps you remember her soulful rendition of the song written by Norman Gimbel and Charles Fox, "Killing Me Softly." And if you haven't, the magic of these cell phones today is, once you get home or even on the way home, you can hear it. The relevant lines are, strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song. Before moving on, I want to think with you for a minute about how sacred such a secular song in its inception sounds when it's performed in this manner, in this space, in this context. Do you notice that? If you hadn't known the song, it could have been a church tune. And now, if you'll quickly look at the note from your music director on the back of your booklet, you will see that this is exactly what happened with hymn 653 that we sang just moments ago. See that? And here's something that you may not know. In the Hasidic mystical Jewish movement, there's a doctrine that they call the elevation of melody. It doesn't have anything to do with pitch or transposition. It means taking a melody from a secular context and elevating it by bringing it into sacred usage. So that's what you've done with your hymn 653, and who knows, maybe at some future worship service, this too will be a church tune, and some child who's not yet of an age of understanding will never know what it really was at first. Okay. With sermonic license, I'm asking us to change the words from killing me softly to healing me softly with his words. Healing with soft words. That is, after all, the point of the Bible narrative that we heard. Let's remember the fuller story. Elijah was the lonely man of faith. He stood up for the worship of the one true Lord when there was defection all around him. A chapter or two ago, he had a showdown with 400 priests of Baal at Mount Carmel, and he was triumphant. If you want to go through that, you can read in your upcoming programming booklet that on August 15th, you'll have the opportunity to sing the choruses of Mendelssohn's Elijah. And you too can be the priests of Baal. No, Baal, we cry to thee, hear and answer us, right? You can do that too. So that's the story. Elijah faces them down, and he wins the contest. God heeds his prayer. God sends fire from heaven, consuming Elijah's sacrifice after the 400 priests and prophets of Baal have been shown to be completely futile, because what they worship is a thing of naught. The Israelites, a tough audience, true, but this time they're impressed. But that's not good enough for wicked Queen Jezebel. Her response, as you heard in the reading, was to put a price on Elijah's head. And that came near to breaking his spirit. He fled, he prayed for death. At that point, God gives him a most unusual experience. So unusual that it is not recorded in any of the chapters of the Hebrew Testament from the time of the Exodus until the time of Elijah, a full 3 centuries. From the time of the Exodus until the time of Elijah, there is no record of any Israelite going back to Mount Sinai. I understand in this reading it's called Chorev, which is just a geographical variant. Chorev is the same place as Sinai. It hadn't happened. He's at Sinai. Well, if you knew the Bible up through the book of Deuteronomy, what would you expect to happen at Sinai if God's going to have a revelation? You would expect thunder and lightning and loud voices and the sound of the ram's horn growing louder and louder. That's what happens in Exodus. And that's the accompaniment to God's voice. Here, we have the same thing, but with a dramatic difference. We have ear-splitting noise, but God is not in the wind. We have earthquake, but God is not in the earthquake. We have fire, but God is not in the fire. Where is God? The Hebrew expression is kol dimama daka. Kol is voice, dimama is silence, and daka is slender. The sound of slender silence. It's impossible to translate, which is why all the different English translations each come up with something slightly different. God's word is in that sound of slender silence. Not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the loudness, but in the softness. And in the softness, God summons Elijah to what will become the crowning accomplishments of his life. Let's ponder what this passage says to us today. We live in a loud world of hyper-partisan voices. People don't talk to each other. They shout at each other. Not really at each other either. The other is a foil. They're shouting to their own cheering rallies. I remember with fondness some trips down Route 95 heading to Florida and passing the south of the border billboards. Remember those? Once, to keep my boys from getting bored on the long, long trip, I had one of them count Ron John Surf Shop, and I had the other one count south of the border. Who do you think won? South of the border. Blew them away. But the south of the border billboards have a self-deprecating humor, which is actually their saving grace. The people who want to fill up the billboards of your imagination, who want to monopolize your access to information today, have nothing self-deprecating about them. They have a combination of anger and swagger. Every so often, since we're speaking about long car rides, what does a rabbi do for a guilty pleasure on a long car ride? Every so often, I listen to Christian fundamentalist religious radio programming. For just a bit, as much as I can take, until I get into the range of WETA or something like that. What I hear is the evangelical counterpart of this secular political extremism. And I find it dismaying but remarkable that people who consider themselves so religious have in fact assimilated into such a secular way of talking. It's really astounding. To listen to this radio, you'd think that Jesus was a jingoist, not a thorn in the side of the Roman Empire's collaborationist religious establishment. Now, I don't have a dog in this race, but just as a scholar, I think they've got Jesus all wrong. It's no surprise that in the social domain as well, the hyper-adversarial mentality of our debased political culture has come to dominate ever more of our interpersonal space. As a society, we are at great risk of losing the graciousness that allows people to disagree without becoming disagreeable. What can I tell you as a rabbi? The classical rabbis give us two definitions of heroism. Both of them are counterintuitive. Both of them badly need to be heard by our country at this time. The hero, says one rabbi, is that person who achieves self-control. The hero, adds another rabbi, is the one who converts an enemy into a friend. I look around, I see so little energy devoted to self-control. I see posturing. I see intelligence in the service of dehumanizing and demonizing the other. Don't see self-control. Likewise, I see precious little attempt to negotiate from a basis of a sincere search for some even slender common ground with those who come from a different place. Gridlock, or worse, is the predictable outcome. You can be browbeaten into silence, but that will not compel your assent to the bully who is shouting at you. That's what our famous Virginian, Thomas Jefferson, said in his Statute of Religious Freedom, that the mind cannot be coerced into agreement. So let's apply the golden rule and recognize that it doesn't work to be the shouting man either. Back to the intersection of contemporary song and Bible story. God's message to Elijah is all the more effective for the surprising break from the one previous revelation at Sinai. It is as if God had deliberately chosen the place where overwhelming volume had accompanied revelation in order to show that there are times when we need to speak softly in order to be heard at all. Wise, veteran teachers, I know we have some teachers in the congregation today. You know that sometimes you speak softly to get a noisy class to quiet down. Wise people in relationship will know that there's a time to speak softly even in difficult encounters, so as to help the listener to manage not to throw up barricades of self-defensiveness. The wonderful benefit of knowing when to speak softly goes beyond utility. It goes beyond the value of tactical surprise. Soft words can soften the heart. As the book of Proverbs reminds us, a soft answer turns away anger. You see, anger can inflict upon us emotional glaucoma. Anger can inflict upon us spiritual tunnel vision. When we suffer from that, softness can restore our field of vision, can help us to get over ourselves a little bit, and thus to heal. And don't we need healing? I'll close with a Jewish prayer. Heal us, O Lord, and we shall be healed. Blessed are you, O Lord, the healer of all flesh, the doer of wonders. Amen.